Thank you for that introduction. I used to come here a lot. There's not anything I used to be. I was walking through Waterloo Station not a million years ago on my way back to Yeovil, and a man came up to me and said, "Here, didn't you used to be Paddy Ashdown?" So I told him that I thought I had been at some stage, but the fact that you guys have invited me here seems to indicate that I still am, and that's jolly reassuring for me, not necessarily for you. You know, I was thinking, oh, Ashdown, you went to the bloody place to get rid of it, for God's sake. I mean, it's ludicrous, that place, isn't it? Absolutely ludicrous. Only two ways of getting into the House of Lords, by the way. One is you're a friend of the Prime Minister, and the other is your great-grandmother slept with the King. I'm not entirely certain which of these provides better opportunity. But the sooner you get rid of it, the better. I was thinking, apart from you, of course, and various others, it's amazing how many of us find good reasons not to vote to get rid of it. Anyway, look, that's not the right subject of talking. I was thinking about what I would talk to you about today, and you know, we had a tremendous meeting, the MPs at Hatfield, and by the way, we had a tremendous conference. I think one of the best conferences I can ever remember in our party. So are we just sort of irrationally happy, like Liberal Democrats usually are, with no rational basis for this happiness? I don't think we are, but that might bring the right questions afterwards. I mean, is this just because there's a sort of a large dose of sadomasochism in every Liberal Democrat's heart, and we like it when it's most difficult? And I could talk to you about that too. I don't think it's irrational that we should be looking to the next election with a degree of realism, but also confidence. But we'll talk about that in questions. I don't want to do that, actually. I want to talk to you, if I may, on a slightly higher plane, because these have been very, very tough times for all of you, and they're tough times still. And I'm frightened, actually. I'm not frightened for the party, but I am frightened. You know, we all of us have something in our lives, beyond our ordinary lives, that sustains us in one form or another: a religious belief, our families, our politics, of course. Something else just outside the circle of our lives that sustains. For me, that something is music on the one hand, but poetry, I have a tremendous attachment to it. So you're going to get some tonight. And I'll tell you why. Because the poem that's rattling around in my brain at the moment is the great poem, frightening poem, by W.B. Yeats, called The Second Coming. And it begins, turning and turning on the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. All spins out of the centre cannot hold, the good lack all conviction, and the bad burn with a passionate intensity. There's something horrible in there about mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. In another terrible phrase, the beast slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. I'm very frightened at present, not because the world is full of challenges. It certainly is. I think the problems that confront us are as big as any we have ever experienced, existential problems, since certainly the Second World War, problems confronted by environmental challenge, environmental poisoning of our living space, a declining, fracturing international situation with threat on all sides, very, very fragile economic problems around us. It may be that we have, thanks in large measure to this party, and we should be proud of it, maybe that we have created an island in Britain where we can look more optimistically to the future, but it does not need much from the beasts circling around outside the campfire that we see: instability in Europe, rising debt, chaos in the Middle East. To imagine circumstances which could throw that off. All of these things are frightening enough. But I add to this another fact, which is the fracturing, the fragmentation of our political system. By the way, not just ours, in almost all the advanced Western democracies. Turning and turning on the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. And I look and see the end, not death, but the threats to rational politics, to rational decision making. And I see again the kind of things which those from the 1930s, I don't make predictions that were the same, would have noticed the rise of the demagogue with the simplistic answers. Now, I don't say this isn't our fault in politics, I think it is. I think what we have done in politics, not necessarily our party, but we can't exclude ourselves from the blame, is left a great gap where that clash of principle and creed should be, and if we supplanted it by the politics of managerialism. Remember what Blair said, what Cameron said, I won't change much, I'll just distribute the goodies better. And now the goodies are running out, and you can't do that any longer. And into that gap where debate and principle should lie has been a vacuum which is then inevitably, how else? Vacuums, nature abhors a vacuum, filled by the press with a conspiracy to be obsessed with the petty. And since we will not occupy that, with those great principles that have to underpin liberal progressive politics, of course it gets filled by other messages, by the more simplistic ones, not the good ones but the bad ones. You know, we stand for a form of politics that appeals, as it always does, difficult thing to do by the way, difficult to win votes on, appeals to the better angels of our nature. It's almost impossible to win votes on that in the present climate, and instead we see the devil's sons occupying that space, with consequences that you know of. I could be talking of UKIP, but I'm not exclusively. But I am saying this, that two things, thinking about this on the train as I was coming up, two things really worry me. And that is that if you look back over the last 150 years of progressive politics, arguably since the foundation in the latter part of the 19th century of the Liberal Party, we were the ones who began it. The whole principle, the whole argument, the whole public discourse about progressive politics has been founded on two propositions. One is that you can win votes by putting forward a proposition in favour of the common good. That it is possible to make so that we can win the debate in favour of the common good against the narrow vested interests. And in our present climate, I think it is almost impossible to win votes on the proposition of the common good. Because stick that up there, and you will imagine immediately attacked, torn down by the vociferous voices of vested interest of one sort or another. The very foundations of what we have stood for, not just us, let's not pretend it's just the Liberals. I mean, decent Tories have stood it for, if there is such a thing as a decent Tory, and I'm sure there is. It's not a precise contradiction in terms, though it seems to appear more and more so at times today. There's still some around there, a threatened species. But there are some there, and of course the Labour Party too. But that space is almost gone. You stick up a proposition in favour of us doing something for the common good, and this extraordinary beast, the Chinese, by the way, call it the beast with the beast with 1,000 black heads, the mob, will gather. And it isn't the mob that will, it isn't the crowd that will turn up and man a barricade for the great isms, communism, socialism, capitalism, liberalism. It's one that can be summoned up in a trice, like a bushfire, onto the streets of London, to tear down a particular proposition that is available at the time. The basis, it seems to me, I hope I'm not just being a miserable old misanthrope in my old age, but the basis for a decent, rational dialogue, which reaches conclusions in the common interest and for the common purpose, seems to me to be dangerously undermined. And the second proposition, which has been the basis, the foundation for progressive politics these last 150 years, is also, I think, even more dangerously undermined. Because actually, those 150 years have been about winning votes on the proposition that we are better together, of unity. We stand together across the classes. We stand together across the colours. We stand together across the creeds. It was always a proposition of hope. We stand together as a united kingdom. We stand together as a united Europe. And we have won on that proposition. And yet that central tenet of progressive politics is now most powerfully in danger. Now the public discourse is not about unity and the benefits of unity, but about division. It is division that holds sway. The Scots tell us they must leave the United Kingdom. We love us, but we hate them. And I saw, as somebody who has seen destructive nationalism setting a community on fire in Belfast and in Bosnia, I heard them say, I'm a patriot. I'm a patriot of my country. But a patriot is somebody who loves their country without having to hate another. Destructive nationalism is somebody who likes us because we're on the basis that we hate them. And I heard that very powerfully in the Scottish debate. I don't say it from the top, I don't say it from Alex Salmond, though he allowed it to continue. But certainly in the bottom of the, as it were, subculture of that debate was about division, about hate, about enmity. And of course we hear it most powerfully in UKIP, which takes this appalling proposition that we would be better, not together, but apart, separate from them, separate from immigrants. The three things that hold UKIP together: one is the hate of Westminster, the second is the hate of Brussels, and the third is we wish it was the 1950s. By the way, I don't see, that's a political movement. It's not yet a political party, and it doesn't become a political party until they can unite behind a sensible manifesto for a civilized country. And I don't believe they ever can. Look at their last manifesto and you begin to see that. But that's not my central point. My central point is that they win votes, bucket loads of them. By the way, those two parties, one left-wing, one right-wing, the SNP and UKIP, are genuine national movements, which have genuinely got people voting. Did you realise that 1 in 50 of the Scottish population today is a member of the SNP? A member. This is a huge national movement. But what is it about? It's about division. It's about separation. Do not tell me these are not dangerous times. And for UKIP, it makes this extraordinary proposition on which it wins votes by the bucketload, on which it overturns the established order. And the proposition at its heart is this: that at this moment, we should part company from the European Union. We should go it alone. We should be isolationist. Do we not understand how much the terms of trade of Europe's existence have changed these last 10 years? I mean, 10 years ago, you could count for certain on the United States, the other side. We didn't need a foreign policy, we didn't need a defense policy. Snuggle close to the United States, we'll be okay. We didn't have to be serious about defense in Europe because they would do it for us. Uncle Sam would come in and save us. It is no longer the case, ladies and gentlemen. Uncle Sam's not looking east across the Atlantic anymore. He's looking west across the Pacific. There are no American troops based in Europe any longer, except those serving their own operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. The very basis of our defense has utterly changed. And at that very same time, on our eastern borders, we have an aggressive and assertive Russian president prepared to use tanks again, prepared to resurrect the Brezhnev doctrine.